now we will address the issue of Russia-NATO relations, keeping in mind the results of the Warsaw summit. And it's my pleasure to pass again the floor to Lukasz Kulesa, and the session will be moderated by Natalia Evtichevich, who is responsible in REAC for Euro-Atlantic portfolio and who is the key intellectual manager of our cooperation on this track. So Natalia.
Good afternoon, everybody. We will have time till 2 o'clock to discuss NATO-Russia relations and the results of the recent summit in Warsaw. And also, as was mentioned, the meeting of Russia-NATO Council is taking place today, and we could also discuss what questions are on the agenda there and what are the expectations of this meeting. We have two speakers with us today. It's Lukasz Kulesa, ELN Research Director, and Dmitry Danilov, Head of the Department of European Security of the Institute of Europe of Russian Academy of Science. They will speak for 10 to 15 minutes, and after that we will open the floor for discussion and for your comments. Lukasz, please, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Natalia. I will first talk briefly about the Warsaw Summit results. Then in the second part, I'll discuss some specific proposals about reducing the mistrust and addressing the risk of incidents and bringing more predictability to our relationship, which I think also will be discussed today in Brussels at the NATO-Russia summit. Regarding the summit itself, I had the pleasure of being around near the stadium in Warsaw where the actual meeting took place, and I'm really happy that in the Warsaw Experts Forum, which accompanied the meeting, we also had Russian experts, including Andrei Kortunov of REAC. But probably watching the summit from a distance, you learned more about it than the people who were at this experts forum, since there was a very tight security between us and the actual leaders taking the decision. So about Warsaw, there was already an excellent, I think, roundtable organized by REAC here on Monday. So I'll be repeating a number of themes from there. I think no major surprises from the summit. All or most of the decisions have been prepared before, have been announced or signaled before. So in a sense, a well-prepared and a boring summit. Because Warsaw was supposed to be about the unity of the alliance. It was supposed to be about avoiding surprises and avoiding any last-minute controversies, and it seems that the alliance managed to do that. And I have to say that Russia helped NATO a lot in staying united through its actions in Ukraine, even through the Syria campaign, through treating the alliance as an enemy and putting it even in the last version of the military doctrine, through the whole process of modernization and the new deployments of military units, through its exercises, including the large-scale SNAP exercises during the last year, and finally also through some of the rhetoric coming from Russia, including from the media about NATO and its aims. So in a response, you have a very strong narrative about the need for deterrence and the need for NATO to signal back to Russia a couple of things. You also have a new vocabulary. So we're talking about anti-access area denial bubbles in Kaliningrad, in the Black Sea. We are talking about Suwałki Gap between Kaliningrad Oblast and Belarus, and we are talking about a nuclear escalation to de-escalate, which I think most of the people at NATO headquarters think is a part of a Russian nuclear posture, that if things go wrong on the conventional side, there would be an early use, or at least threatening of use of nuclear weapons. So as a consequence, a relatively easy agreement among NATO countries that NATO posture along the eastern flank must be strengthened, and that NATO must put more emphasis on deterrence, conventional and nuclear. And please note that all the countries which were present there agreed to that. Germany is sending a battalion, framework battalion to Lithuania. France would most likely send a company to one of the Baltic states. So this is not just about the usual suspects, but all of the NATO countries were there in agree. So there is a clear signal that NATO should not be challenged on its Article 5, should not be tested on this. There have been a signal of support for Ukraine, Georgia and Moldova, but this signal is not as strong as the signal about Article 5 and NATO territory as such. At the same time, I would argue that there are specific decisions or set of decisions that show a certain restraint and at least no major desire for escalation when it comes to the relationship with Russia. The famous battalions will be there, but we are talking about battalions, and still the regional military balance seem to favor Russia when it comes to the number of units and the quality of weapons. And I would like to remind you about some of the studies done before, including the RAND Corporation studies, when they were proposing having a number of brigades being put in the same territory. There is still support for the NATO-Russia Founding Act, which includes the 3 nuclear no's, so no stationing of nuclear weapons at the territory of the so-called new member states. Also, no reorientation of missile defense. Missile defense is still supposed to be about the challenges coming from outside the Euro-Atlantic area. And finally, there is some discussion about dialogue or dialogue offered towards Russia. So I would say a strong signal about deterrence, but not necessarily a willingness by major allies to move beyond the Warsaw package, unless being forced to do that by Russia. And I think the statements on dialogue and on the wish to avoid a new Cold War by NATO Secretary General, I would go as far as to call them genuine. That there is a preference for stabilization of the confrontation, putting the tensions under control and not letting them spill out. So it seems that there is a choice for Russia and for the Russian leadership. Does it want to stabilize the relationship, keep it antagonistic but keep it under better control than before? Does it want to continue with the present practices which many called brinkmanship, including close contacts between the military units, including exercises, or maybe does it want to escalate further the confrontation? And there are some responses to the Warsaw Summit, including movement of nuclear warheads closer to NATO territory, including getting out of the INF treaty, that would be seen as escalating the whole situation. So I think there is a choice for Russia. But if Russia chooses stabilization, and if we choose stabilization, then it requires a little bit more than less aggressive statements from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, even a little bit more than this initiative about putting the transponders on military aircraft over the Baltic. Some ideas here might include voluntary measures on transparency of exercises. As you may know, NATO publishes the schedule of the major exercises planned for the next year or so. Russia might do the same, or my signal through different channels. What are the main exercises schedule? Then the second, less frequently organizing large-scale snap exercises, which many NATO countries find problematic. As a third point, re-engagement in Vienna in the OSCE framework. As I think all of you know, there's right now the process of modernization and updating of the Vienna document on confidence and security building measures, and I've heard that Russia tabled some proposals but then did not really engage in the discussions. Re-engagement might be something to consider. Then dealing with the incidents, and here transponders is only part of the problems. We're looking at these dangerous incidents that include the ships, that might include even the land units at a certain point. So I think we need a much broader approach than just the transponders. And then finally, the threat to civilian aviation. Our organization, the ELN, proposed that we should reactivate the cooperative airspace initiative. Part of this initiative was about sharing the information from the military radars, from the military system to the civilian system. And maybe this is something that might help deal with any challenges to the civilian air traffic. And let me stop here, looking forward to the discussion.
Thank you, Lukasz, for your comments, and I believe that some issues are estimated in this part of the world a bit differently, and the floor is for Dmitry Danilov. Please, you have 10 to 15 minutes.
Thank you very much, and thank you for inviting me here just to present some of my vision or maybe ideas upon the results of Warsaw Summit or on NATO-Russia relationship. I think that first of all I will begin with very clear statement that there is no surprises in the Welsh summit, nor serious maybe intrigues during this summit, on discussions, consultations, as well as when we think about or assess the results of this political leaders meeting. Of course, the main political decisions were made at Welsh summit, maybe just before, but mainly in Welsh summit, and after that by several NATO Council meetings in the framework of ministerial, both foreign affairs and defense ministers, including, of course, the decisions towards Russia and the relations with Russia. To sum up, the decisions were just to reassess the main threats and challenges which NATO faced, and then the so-called Russian aggression and deterioration by it of an international order and the European security has been agreed by NATO politically as the main security challenge. At Welsh summit it was added just as well as some other threats and challenges from the south. NATO by having agreed on that, confirmed that it was the first result, that business as usual with Russia is impossible, and on the contrary, NATO needed to strengthen its core mission of collective defense, including the consequent reconfiguration of NATO military activities after the withdrawal from Afghanistan, to strengthen its deterrence structures and preparedness aimed at containing of Eastern, that is Russian-born threats. NATO military political authorities were instructed to implement these main decisions. So at Warsaw Summit, the Warsaw Summit agenda agreed upon this work, that it was made good, including the creation of rapid direction NATO forces, and decided officially, or approved officially, the decisions of defense ministers of NATO to establish the so-called spearhead force of NATO on the eastern border. Without giving some details, I can add to this that it is combined by the increasing activity of NATO in the southeastern flank, including the Black Sea, with projection to Mediterranean. Also, it was decided just to add to this spearhead force, just as the main and very high readiness component of rapid reaction forces of NATO, to add to this the maritime component. It's very, from Russian point of view, it's a very deteriorating situation and decisions. So some of our Western colleagues and maybe NATO side, they argue that these decisions are not of offensive nature. So it's not an answer to Russian aggressive behavior, but rather is the signal to Russia that NATO collectively is more consolidated and are ready to respond to the maybe not to Russian actions, but to instability rising in the east. But at the same time, it's absolutely clear that for Russia, it doesn't matter that what size of this spearhead force is. It's of 4 battalion of personnel of 4,000, but for Russia it is clear that this is absolutely it is reconfigured, the whole general reconfiguration of NATO military activities towards the threats from Russia. And also the question, the simple question is, if there is a spearhead, so there is a spear behind this head. Spearhead. So what about the spear? Spear is the force of 40,000 of personnel ready to reinforce the NATO forces on the eastern borders of Russian flank. So from military and operational point of view, this is a very serious challenge for Russia and for Russian military planning. Of course, in general, instead of
wait for additional explanation by NATO at today's, for example, NRC ambassadorial. Russia was prepared to give so-called adequate answer to this shifts and principal change of political military situation in the center of Europe. It doesn't matter who is right. For the moment, Russia or NATO claims that the Russian response is inadequate, on the contrary of Russian point of view, imbalanced and add very, as Lukasz said, new energy to the deterioration of situation, but from Russian point of view, we need to be prepared for worst scenario, including analysis upon the new defense posture of NATO. The second block of Warsaw Summit was the so-called projecting stability. The projecting stability by stepping up the NATO partnerships network on many directions, including open door policy, etc., etc. And so I just would like to cite one thesis from our first session here, that it was said that Russia generally exports oil and gas. But for it's not only from for not NATO, but mainly for Euro-Atlantic. Russia also supplies instability. So Russia is the source of instability. And as Alexander Verbo, for example, commented the results of Warsaw Summit, he told us that NATO is was intended to offer assurance measures to allies and partners. For Russia, it's the readiness against Russia. So we have to reassess this all this scope of NATO relationship from this point of view. From this point of view, if NATO strengthen the partnership, but at the same time, the main question is in what logic and for what purposes. From Russian point of view, the answer is clear. It's at least there are increasing concerns about from Russian side towards this for forging NATO partnerships. Of course, one of the problem remains. It is NATO enlargement. First of all, towards post-Soviet space, Georgia and Ukraine, and we understand that the decision, anyway, the decision which could be taken is of political nature, not that this is not a technical type of decisions. Also I can add to this two very serious things as concerning the new emphasis in NATO operational planning and defense agenda. It's including, first of all, including the cyber defense in the as the one of the additional dimension of NATO military posture. So it does mean that this kind of threats could be added to the NATO military actions also under Article 5 of Washington Treaty. And the second one is emphasis on hybrid wars and actions. And saying this, I would like to say that this new emphasis of NATO from NATO are added into the partnerships with the NATO partners, be it Georgia, for example, Ukraine, or others. So, from military political point of view, this is also very challenging factor for Russia. The third theme of Warsaw Summit was NATO-EU relationship, and without giving you some details, I would like to make the maybe actual assessment of this new NATO-EU joint declaration. From our point of view, this is it means the EU's engaging in NATO formulated policies and threats understanding. And from this point of view, we just have to understand that EU loses all its autonomy in decision making upon the security and defense, first of all, and secondly, it couldn't be perceived as their autonomous and interesting partner for Russia itself in the foreseeable future. There is a shift towards another side. Okay. Yes. So I'm very skeptical about any proposals, also with this report, to organize some kind of dialogue between Russia and the European Union on reducing risks and incidents. The main points of NATO position towards, or attitude towards future Russia-NATO relations, it was formulated as defense and dialogue. Also, it was added the third D. It was defense and deterrence on the one side, and dialogue on the other side. And of course, NATO argues that communication is very important, and of course for Russia it's also very important. We have to have at least some platform, some fora to conduct the dialogues. And NRC channel is is also important for Russia. We would not like to destroy all these political fora, but at the same time, the main question is the dialogue for what, or on what? On what? On how to just the dialogue on how NATO could better implement its deterrence policies and practice against Russia. It's not interesting for the moment for Moscow. In today's meeting of NRC and ambassador level, the main NATO accent is made on Ukraine and on Minsk agreements. But for Moscow, the positions are absolutely clear that we may discuss we may discuss this agenda, but only in the context of European security and European security architecture, but not with a view of Warsaw Summit wording that Russia is where Russia was abused for deteriorating the European security and invading in Ukraine. The agenda for the moment is rather asymmetric. From Russian side, it's not enough to have this NRC as the briefing platform when NATO explains us that they are defensive and they answer to our increasing threats and challenges. But for Russia, the main points are different ones. That we need to think about how to avoid to rise of arms, how to de-escalate the situation, how to find out the meeting points in our approaches. How can we cooperate, or could we cooperate in Afghanistan, for example, or in Syria? This is for us an agenda. But I finish my remarks here. The main intrigue of today's ambassadorial of NRC is whether the NRC member states, not NATO and Russia, NRC member states, I underline it, could propose some positive agenda which could be explored or raised on the higher political level to propose to our ministers or leaders this kind of agenda. I am very skeptical about this. So my point of view that the risks reduction is the main common practical interest for the moment for NATO and Russia. Thank you.
Dmitry Alexander, thank you for your comments, and now I open the floor for the discussion, and I just remind that we are still online and the broader audience than here can follow our discussion, so your comments are very welcome, and after that I will give the floor to our speakers to conclude. Please, who will be the first? Tatiana Glebovna, please.
First of all, I would like to address with my thanks to both presenters, to Lukasz and to Dmitry. It was interesting and important. What I would like to say or to add. First of all, according to my assessment, the results of the summit were not surprising. Because in the major part they mean the realization of World Summit of 2014. Indeed, NATO demonstrated the transatlantic solidarity, and they they give additional assurance plan or reassurance plans to Baltic states and to Poland. But it was expected. We do know that it would happen. In my view, this decision, they are not challenging to Russian national security, but they demonstrate that in the case of hot confrontation, Lord save us from that, NATO had this first line and would use this first line for the future deployment, as the very famous Trend Corporation exercises demonstrated that Russia could be in 3-4 days in Tallinn, Riga and Vilnius, So it was a demo. In my view, it was a demonstration, first of all, to the NATO members that NATO is ready to activate Article 5. I would like to remind you that in Russia and in other places of the world there were different hesitations about the, necessity and of the reality of Article 5. Now it is proved that it will be activated. This is among things, in my view, very interesting and important thing is NATO-EU declaration. And according to my assessment, it was a consequences not of the so-called Russian threat. It was one of the result, very, very tangible result of the Brexit. I was absolutely convinced that after Brexit, NATO and EU will consolidate their activities, not only on hybrid, dimension, hybrid threat, but this is, also the cyber defense and some other dimensions. In my view, what is important among the things that didn't happen, and for a certain period that were expected as a nightmare in Moscow, NATO didn't give map to Georgia. There were a moment somewhere after February, March that there were, there were expectations from Georgian elites that it could be done. It didn't happen, and for the sake of NATO-Russia, this is very positive fact. Now I would like to react on Dmitry comment, dialogue on what? In my view, Dim, the same fact that NATO-Russia Council is happening now is extremely important and positive, because in spite of the crisis, we are sending to each other and to the world the signal that the basis for negotiations is still existing and both sides have political will to use it. As far as the NRC was the first institutionalization of NATO-Russia relations in the history of NATO-Russia, it is extremely important, the same fact of the NRC. It is extremely important, the signal that not only deterrence or defense, but dialogue. Indeed, probably we are, to a certain extent, in the situation of 67 or 68, when Pierre Armel issued his famous report vis-à-vis Soviet Union, not only deterrence, but détente. Now, not only deterrence, but dialogue. Dialogue on what? And in my view, it is extremely important, and it is important for both sides. Dialogue on the issue how to reduce the risks. It is extremely important for NATO and Russia. Dialogue on, it could be dialogue, and it is a dialogue on Ukraine, because it was a game changer. Ukraine was a game changer, and it is still the main factor aggravating Russian relations with the West. Then dialogue on Afghanistan, and there is information that it could continue, the dialogue on Afghanistan. Then dialogue on arms control, especially conventional arms regime in Europe. Dialogue on confidence building measures. It is absolutely evident that we need new stage in confidence building measures, and it is not only, it could be organized and should be organized not only on the basis of OSCE, not only in Vienna, but on the NATO-Russia track. Dialogue, I will add to the list, dialogue on cyber defense. And you know well that negotiations between Russia and the United States, they started several months ago, and they are continuing, and they should be continuing inside the NRC. It is extremely important. And in my view, what is also very important, probably dialogue on hybrid wars. Because we should define what is it, hybrid war. You know how it happened. After Russian operation in Crimea, Western side defined it as a hybrid war. Then Russia took this initiative and blamed the West for organizing hybrid war against Russia. So I think that now it is a, you see, it is a phase, it is a time when both sides should start at least the dialogue how to define the hybrid wars and what could be done on this track. Thank you.
Thank you, Tatiana Glebovna, for your contribution. And please, the next. Yeah, Vyacheslav Ivanovich, please.
Thank you very much to two presenters, Kulesa and Dmitry. I decided to say a few words because I participated in today's roundtable with our colleagues, Western colleagues from European Union, yesterday and the day before yesterday. And the questions which were discussed there, they were rather similar to what we're talking about right now. I liked very much the end of what Dmitry said. Many things would depend on what we will know about today's meeting of our representative and NATO ambassadors. This is a significant point. But I would not agree completely with Tatiana Glebovna on what might be the theme of dialogue. I rather share point of view of Dmitry that dialogue and deterrence, they're rather funny couple of words, because I see that the dialogue in the under the conditions prevailing now can be only about the dimensions and format of NATO expansion. That's all. Of course, I would agree with you that from the military point of view, the decision to place 4 or 5 battalions in 4 or 5 countries nearing our border is just nothing. But this adds to the cacophony of saber rattling, which is very dangerous thing. And from my point of view, if we speak about dialogue, dialogue should have included the decision making by NATO leadership on the deployment of these 4 battalions in the territory bordering our border. That would be the subject of dialogue. But we're just at the recipient end. No one invites us to discuss this, and even we now just expect explanation from the other side. Not more. We are not invited to discuss it. We wait explanation. What do you mean, friends, so to say, and partners? You know, I consider this is not a dialogue. But then, about dialogue as well, you know that several points for dialogue, which Tatiana Glebovna, you suggested, are absolutely correct. Dialogue might be there. For example, Afghanistan, no doubt. For example, the situation in Ukraine, of course, no doubt. Diminishing of risks, no doubt. But several subjects, they are not the themes for our discussion with NATO. by and large, therefore, discussion between just United States and Russia. Arms control. There are only two countries which are engaged in arms control, in the reduction of arms and ammunition, so to say, with making our position transparent for the outside world, United States and Russia. And I think that, for example, cyber defense, it's again for United States and Russia by and large. Probably Great Britain, Germany and France, but I do not think that something might be added from the side of new members of NATO. Then, what again attracts my attention, and I consider that this as well cannot be the subject for dialogue. Probably I'm simplifying things, simplify certain pronouncements, but just imagine our colleagues from NATO, they speak about Russian military infrastructure on the border of a NATO territory. Please give me an answer. How this territory appeared near the borders of Russia? It is the result of expansion of NATO, not the expansion of Russia beyond its borders. So things seem to me go turned upside down. Let's feel this pronouncement with certain logic. We move our forces strictly in the framework of Russian territory. We can do it whenever and wherever, when we want. It is our right as a sovereign country. But when NATO expanded its territory and found itself on the borders of Russia, please, friends and partners, what did you expect? That we move our forces from our borders over Ural? Never. It is absolutely natural. This is again something strange and which cannot be even a point of discussion in dialogue, because things got turned upside down. The next thing which I want to add, and I privately explained it to my friend Kulesa, about the attempts to reduce the danger of accidents, military accidents. As a member of task force of ELN, I signed the first, so to say, call to the leaders of NATO. And it involved Russia as well, leaders of Russia, to reduce the scope for such kind of probabilities and possibilities in the air. But now we see the same situation on the sea. So can we go in a piecemeal manner to decide upon here, there, and there? To be absolutely frank, and it was born in my mind only the day before yesterday, when I came to a rather, I think, dangerous conclusion that political leadership tries to find a scapegoat for any kind of misadventure, and this scapegoat will be our military people from both sides. Just a mistake, human mistake, from our side, from their side, or technical failure of the aircraft, which goes too low over the military battleship of NATO and just falling down on the ship. You know, who is responsible for this? A technician who prepared the aircraft for its flight, the pilot who was flying this aircraft, or political leadership who did not de-escalate after our first call the scope for such kind of misadventures. And you know that usually life is such that the quantity used to turn after some time into quality. The more military exercises, the more flights like this, the nearer our military infrastructure is to each other, you know, the more scope for such misadventures might appear. I do not speak about misunderstandings, I do not speak about misinterpretation, but real misadventure, mishap, so to say. It might happen like this. And who is going to be a scapegoat? Not political leadership, which practically pushes things to the very dangerous line. But it would be just people who are flying aircraft, that's all. So again, even here, the things become turned upside down. And that's why I requested my colleagues from task force to understand me, why I did not write. I explained that I am for more comprehensive call and inclusive. And first of all, it should be a kind of political diffusion, not the just to give different kind of orders to that or those pilots. It is not correct. We should not find the scapegoats. We should find the ways and means how to diffuse situation, to de-escalate the tension which does exist and sometimes even on the rising scale. I agreed yesterday with what my German colleague Mr. Ever said about when he was asked by Madam Müller to give to define Russian relationship with European Union, with Europe as such, by one word, by one term. He said alienation, and even added escalating alienation. I agree with this term. We are not in a war. We are not even in a Cold War situation. We are worse than in the Cold War. In the Cold War, everything was predictable. It was bipolar world. There were absolutely concrete red lines which no side wanted and was able to overstep. Now there are no lines. Even the diplomatic language stopped to be diplomatic. We demonize concrete people, concrete leaders. We demonize concrete countries, not thinking about the consequences. What a layman, a person in the street would think when he watches TV and knows that such and such person is a rascal and so on and so forth. I do not understand this. Yes, we are in a war. We are, first of all, in a war, in information war, or disinformation war. This is a very dangerous game. It's also the duty, and not only moral duty, of political leadership to de-escalate information war. Definitely so. Then, one last thing. My friend, Ambassador Ischinger, the day before yesterday, he put this question. What kind of Europe Russia would like to see? Strong or weak? there is a suspicion that Russia would like to see weak Europe, that Russia is very happy that Brexit happened. And you know, from my point of view, I explained it yesterday, that this is incorrect. Russia would like to see a strong Europe. But what do you mean by the term strong? I mean strong Europe when it is a united Europe and independent in taking its decision concerning its ties with Russia. This is what I would like to see. This is a strong Europe, when its decisions are not dictated by someone else from beyond the ocean, Atlantic Ocean. And those people beyond Atlantic Ocean, they did not hesitate to publicly say that many efforts were taken to persuade European leaders to participate in sanctions against Russia. I do not like strong Europe, strong in its united attitude, in their use of sanctions against Russia. I do not like such united Europe. I would prefer disunited, no doubt, and it does not mean that it is going to be weak, but disunited. I would prefer that many countries now are thinking more and more about its own economic interests, because they took this decision under the pressure from the third country, and they took it against its national economic interests. Now they feel it. That's why I would like to see Europe united. Again, it's a decision about sanctions as well, but not against Russia, but dismantling sanctions. And of course I am against strong, so-called strong Europe, which relies upon the military infrastructure nearer to Russian borders. It does not mean that the Europe becomes stronger, it becomes weaker in case the infrastructure of anti-ballistic missile system of the United States is on the border, practically nearer to the border of Russia. It does not become stronger, it becomes weaker, because it automatically becomes the aim for our rockets, no doubt. And those people should understand this. So the picture is rather delicate, rather difficult to be solved very quickly, but the efforts should be turned into the direction of solution. And solution, of course, political solution, of course, by means of dialogue, but by means of dialogue on vital problems, which really make the dialogue the dialogue. Thank you. Sorry for so long.
Thank you for your contribution, and I believe a lot of people in the room shares your concerns about accidents. And please, any other comments on Warsaw Summit or how to reduce the risks of accidents? Sergei, colleague, please.
I just want to support Tatiana's reference to the dialogue on cybersecurity. I think that one of the decisions of particular concern is the probability or the real fact of application cyber threats, cyber attack to Article 5. Why all this stuff? That these 4 battalions is just a children's game in comparison with the cyber threats we face on both sides. In terms of damage, another thing. So if we interpret Article 5 through the international law system, no problem, Because if there is attack, the right of by the military force, the right of every state and NATO to defend its territory. But cybersecurity is not the subject of international law. It's nothing. There is no international law on cybersecurity and the right of states to react on the cyber attacks. It's still the subject to come on the international arena. So if there is application of Article 5 to cyber defense, there is a lot of danger. I'm not talking about the nature of the threat on the cyberspace. And this is the subject for dialogue, at least at explanation. From my point of view, Tatiana referred to the Russia-US dialogue, still alive, by the way, on cyber issues. I'm talking about this major important infrastructure agreement. But there is also some successes in OSCE, CBMs on this issue, just resulted quite recently under the German chairmanship. I think one of the tasks, first, is to explain the application of Article 5 to cyber. The second, not to hamper from the NATO side on the work of OSCE, and also not to hamper on bilateral dialogues, not only between the United States and Russia, but on the possibility, and the Germans and the French, they are interested for this kind of dialogues on cyber thing with Russia, not to hamper this kind of dialogue. This is a very dangerous thing from the cyber defense. Thank you.
Thank you. Ilya Kravchenko, and after that, Mark Anting.
Well, I have a short question to speakers regarding the future of NATO. If you can answer this question, because it's quite unpredictable nowadays. But regarding the idea, how can you comment on the idea that NATO in recent years has been transforming into a more political organization rather than a military alliance? And there are a few factors that can prove that idea. For example, the necessity, so-called necessity, to include Montenegro to the alliance as a member state, or the necessity to send a few battalions to the eastern border of NATO. Both these actions, they do not answer the true military capabilities and the true military threats that can be somehow vital to NATO's security. And there are other examples that we can continue giving regarding this issue of whether or not they are all vital to the NATO security. So once again, my question to the speakers is, do you see NATO in the nearest future as a truly military alliance, or rather a political organization that very clearly and very successfully uses political tools to unify countries inside NATO and somehow add new members to the NATO organization, and unify not only the states inside the NATO, but maybe inside the continent of Europe and besides Europe? So, if you please can answer this question. Thank you.
Could we leave the answers to the end, to the concluding remarks, and now Mark Anting.
Dear friends, we are out of time. That's why I'll speak about essential things. Of course, we are in the beginning of the discussion. Every phrase, every formulation matter, and we need to study it in depth. But not only words, but future deeds as well. But making our judgment and explaining our personal views or official position, there is very important thing not to miss. The matter is that NATO today and USA today considers that we are different players, that there is NATO and outside players, Russian Federation. It was not the case on previous occasions, and it's not the case in reality. We are a security system, and it means that every step which is taken by USA and by NATO to improve their security, that damaging the security of the Russian Federation, means that instead of improving security, we downgrade security. And it means that, like Dmitry Danilov explained in his speech, we need to count not only a few battalions here or there, but all the range of preparations which are made on the sea, on southern borders, as far as different dimensions of military build up. And if they are taken in as a systematic approach, it changes a little bit our appreciation, and even more. But what is very important now, from the point of view of pure logic, no dialogue is possible and necessary when there is a deterrence, when your country is positioned as a threat or a target. And as far as other matters, Russian response must have been the same as the response to sanctions by the European Union. But the matter is that we speak about international peace, about stopping the deterrence of international situation further. We speak about measures which are necessary not to destroy even what is present in our relations now. And we must go beyond diplomacy. We must go beyond pure logic of steps and counter-step measures and counter-steps. And we need to prove that we are, in this very dangerous situation, a responsible country. Yes, discussion about risks is entirely necessary, but at the same time, as a responsible country, as a country thinking about the future of Europe and of the world, we need maybe to enlarge the agenda of future dialogue and discussion, and be one of those who work for de-escalation and not for normalization of the situation which we have now.
Thank you for your comments. We have time for one last comment, if any. If no, then I will give the floor to Lukasz and to Dmitry Alexandrovich to conclude and make their remarks.
Okay. Thank you very much for all the questions and all the remarks. And again, I'll try to answer all the questions, but please bear with me if I don't manage. First of all, I would like to start where Dmitry finished, which is the risk reduction issues. And the way that I understood his comments is that it is just risk reduction that we can discuss in the current circumstances, because other questions might be too difficult to discuss in any sensible way. I'm sorry if I'm misrepresenting, but this is what I got. And actually, risk reduction matters quite a lot in the current circumstances, when we've seen all sorts of incidents during the last years. We've seen deployments and exercises on both sides of the border, and we'll see more after the NATO summit, and probably more as part of the Russian response. So there is quite a lot to talk about under the rubric of risk reduction and confidence building. And it might be a first step before we get into more ambitious topics, but I think this is a step which is both necessary and long overdue. But even with the risk reductions, we need to go to specific initiatives. And I mentioned some of them in my presentations. I know that there is the Russian-Finnish initiative about the transponders, but when we talk about the military risk reduction and confidence building measures, I think we need to go to this specific level of details. I completely agree with General Trubnikov that the problem of the incidents is a political problem. This is the main responsibility of the political leaders, but maybe we, the experts, we need to show them how they could do it. I was struck by a number of comments after the incident involving the Russian fighter bombers and the USS Cole on the Baltic Sea, when the number of commentators and even politicians said, you know, we wish we had rules which are applicable to this kind of incidents. Whereas, as a matter of fact, there are rules. There is an incident at sea agreement between the United States and Russia, which is operational. There are similar bilateral agreements between if we do the counting at the ELN right, between 14 NATO member states and Russia. So there are rules. They just need to be made known to the politicians. We also need to make sure that everybody in the structure of commands and in the ministries of defense and other places, they know what the rules are. We should also think that maybe the same rules can be applied to other NATO countries and Russia, both in their bilateral contacts and in the NATO missions. And this was the essence of one of the initiative of the task force when General Trubnikov was a member. Cyber and Article 5, it appeared quite a lot. With regards to the cyber issues, we are already in the game, and we've seen during the last years cyber attacks going beyond cyber espionage, going towards cyber attack. Some of them, we may say, almost certainly originated from particular countries in our area or from other parts of the world. So we are already in the game. So when NATO says that cyber is a dimension of conflict, I think it's just a statement of fact. It is not introducing something very revolutionary. Then what NATO basically agreed was on a number of defensive measures, because there is no agreement within the alliance about the offensive measures, and a lot of countries guard very closely their offensive cyber capabilities and are not willing to share with the rest of the allies what they can do. With regards to Article 5, I think if you are talking about the cyber attacks on a large scale against elements of critical infrastructures, against elements of the strategic systems connected with nuclear weapons, connected with early warning, or when you have the actual loss of life on a large scale as a consequence of a cyber attack, then we're talking about a possible Article 4 or Article 5 situation. But I think it's very much case-to-case, case-by-case basis. There is also a question, to what extent can you verify and be sure that a particular attack came from a particular country. So a lot to discuss. The future of NATO, political and or military. I think this is in a sense a false choice, because NATO has always been a political military alliance. So there was a political segment, but there was also and is a military organization, and you can't easily distinguish between the two. NATO managed to reinvent itself a couple of times, sometimes on its own, sometimes because the external circumstances or the challenges and threats changed. And frankly speaking, Russia gave NATO a very important shot in the arm in 2014 to mobilize itself and try to reinvent itself again. And we'll see how long this shot in the arm, this additional vitamins would last. But I would say there would always be a lot of common interest that would bind the NATO states together politically, and there would always be a need for a military organization to support these countries acting together. And finally, if I have a question to you, Dmitry, what exactly is an adequate answer to the decisions of the NATO summit? Is it about reinventing or repackaging of the measures that we've already seen, like modernization of the armed forces, deployments in the Western Military District, or are we talking about something different that goes beyond what people like me expect from Russia?
Lukasz, you know, this is not a question for me. It's a question for our leader, first of all, for Vladimir Putin. What could he decide the adequate response? I think that for many reasons, you know that for the moment Russian answers are absolutely adequate. This is mobility, new exercise instruments, new military plannings, including targeting new military establishments in your territory. So it's absolutely clear. What about the next steps? First of all, if you know, even after the famous Lisbon summit of 2010, the decision were made just to try to combine the AMD programs, including the Russian engagement in the common AMD project. But several days after, a few days after, it was a special declaration published by then President Medvedev about the possible or eventual Russian countermeasures if we will fail with this common AMD project. So so this list is indicated. For example, if you know this is the issue of using additional missile strike forces from Russia, namely from our north-west, etc. Also, the question is very important. We received some signals from Washington that President Obama proposed to prolong the AMD terms towards 2020. That it's absolutely inadequate for the moment to discuss with Russian counterparts, because if you know from Russian side, this START 3 agreement is absolutely clear, interconnected with AMD plans. So the question is how, as General Chubnikov told us, the problem is how can we decide it together with the United United States, including or in close connection with future AMD programs in Europe. So it's very difficult. If you think about arms control or confidence building measures, for example, the main question from Russian side is why do we need to propose the new measures, and why we need to support the negotiations on the matter which could be destroyed in some months or years. So these very important issues which has to be decided politically, but mainly in the framework of Russian-American consultations. So I don't know how it now is assessed, for example, the risks and pro and contra vis-a-vis INF agreement, for example, but in some circumstances, I guess Russia could withdraw. Some other points. There are many, but I would underline that also it was said very clear that deterrence couldn't be the one street policy. Deterrence, it is mutual deterrence, and if you declare some plans for contain Russia, also in practical terms, Russia needs to respond. So it's clear. It's in general. Also, the very important question on political and military dimension of NATO nature. As you know, in 19, it was one of the points of in Russian position, in Russian attitude towards NATO, that NATO has to be transformed from a military bloc into political organization. From the very beginning, I was absolutely skeptical about this point, because from my point of view, it's impossible to think that the new political strengthening of the military organization could be good for Russia itself, also considering the NATO enlargement and global partnerships policy. From this point of view, you may understand that nowadays NATO formulate its political objectives collectively, and its policy is more consolidated as before, but with increasing use of military force and military levels. So from this point of view, what is NATO? NATO is military political organization, and for Russia, for the moment, it's a military political organization, the big machine, a military machine, which oppose the military machine of Russian Federation. As for accidents and risks reduction, there is also very important, from my point of view, very important consideration when we think about the possible incidents. It could create that there could be the situations where the decision making is scaling down from highest political level to the operational or even tactical level of military commanders. So it's enormously increase the military risks and objectively the military dangers in Europe. So we need to think and maybe discuss these problems together. It's clear scenario. We just had an example during the Bosnia-Herzegovina times. These incidents of Russia's taking of Pristina airport. So it's very important thing, and from my point of view, yes, the final remark. Yes, it's very important to have the real dialogue with NATO. We have to preserve the political platform for this dialogue, but we need result-oriented dialogue, of course. It's absolutely obvious. But anyway, the other question is who are our Russians addressing? Who is main addresses? Is it NATO? Or maybe not. Maybe for the moment, NATO has not own vision, and this Russian NATO agenda is based on the assessment of future Russian-American relations. I have no answer, but I understand that all these resets policy from NATO or Welsh decisions of NATO are absolutely clearly followed from American lines of politics. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Alexandrovich. Thank you, Lukasz. And I would like to thank you all for spending this morning and this afternoon with RIAC and ALN, discussing NATO-Russia relations and Russia-EU relations. And just a small announcement, on July 18th in the morning at 9 o'clock, we host here the Minister of Foreign Affairs of Portugal, and all who are interested are very welcome to take part. Thank you.
The meeting will be quite short. We will start at 9:30, and at 9 registration, and 9:30 we start the meeting, and at 10:30 we finish the meeting. Thank you. Thank you.